أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. Welcome to another live English broadcast of the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, where we look at various topics concerning the religion of Islam. The Lahore Ahmadiyya movement is an organization whose main objective is to present the true original message of Islam to the entire world, to propagate a peaceful, tolerant, and rational Islam as found in the Holy Quran and in the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. We seek to wipe away misconceptions and wrong notions that have crept into this religion. Those of us who desire to take up this noblest of causes are required to take a pledge or bayat before joining the movement. Today in this broadcast, we would like to examine the rubrics of our pledge and its significance. Joining us today on the panel is Imam Shahid Aziz, who is a holder of a MSc in mathematics and is a graduate of the Institute of Legal Executives. He is a senior member of the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishati Islam Lahore, UK. And we welcome you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this
Assalamu
today.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. To begin, let us look at the question of the bayat. Imam Aziz, can you justify from Islamic sources the position of bayat?
Yes, certainly. What amazes me is that Muslims have been doing things for millennia, not centuries. But as soon as Ahmadis mention it, then suddenly it becomes controversial. That was instituted by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and it is mentioned in the Holy Quran itself. In chapter 9, and I'm sharing screen sharing just to make sure that people can see these things. So if you can share the screen. This is the Holy Quran, chapter 48, verse 10. And it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهَ. Those who took bath on your hands took the bath on Allah's hand. So this is actually mentioned in the Holy Quran as something that the Holy Prophet Muhammad did. Now, what happened was that Muslims were faced with a very serious situation. So, the Holy Prophet Muhammad asked his companions, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, Talha, Zubair. These were the people who were asked to take this bath. There were people among them who fought at Badr. There were people among them who fought at Uhud. And at a critical time, they intervened and put themselves in front of the Holy Prophet Muhammad so that when the opponents fired arrows and spears, they would catch them with their bare hands. These were the people who were asked to take this path. And in fact, Allah mentions this in chapter 9, verse 111, when it says, Allah has bought from the believers their persons and their property. So bath is about sacrificing your life and all your material resources for the cause of Islam. Ba'ath, according to Arabic dictionary, its root is ba, ya, and ayn. And I won't go. It occurs in different forms 15 times in the Holy Quran, in 4 different forms. And basically, it actually means, and this is how Ba'ath is taken, striking together of hands of 2 people in token of ratification of a sale. I don't know about Trinidad, but in England we say, let's shake on that. That's what's happening. You agreed something. And the act of taking the ba'ath means you now promise to fulfill something, or you're swearing to something, or you're taking allegiance and obedience and submission. Now in Hadith, the Holy Prophet is known to have taken ba'ath for jihad, ba'ath when people embraced Islam, ba'ath asking Muslims who had already recited the kalima that they will obey the Sharia and do the right deeds. And one of the very popular ahadith, which is by Auf bin Malik, it shows the significance of this ba'ath. There were a few people gathered together, and Holy Prophet would say, take my ba'ath. And we would put out our hands and respectfully ask the Holy Prophet to take the ba'ath. And he said, promise me you will worship only Allah and fulfill your duty to Allah, perform salat 5 times a day, learn Allah's commandment and act upon it. Now you have a link to our conditions of ba'ath. Are they any different from what is said here? This is the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, take my ba'ath and promise these things. Ibn Ishaq writes that at the time of Ba'ath Ridwan, people generally later on said that the ba'ath was that people would give their lives and die and so on. But he said that the ba'ath, as far as he was concerned, the pledge that he took was, we would not run away from battle. There is a distinction between saying, I will die and I will not run away whatever happens. Now, at Hazrat Saab's time, Muslims were running away from battle against Christian missionaries, against Arya Samaj, against everyone, because they could not answer them. They could not answer them because they had misinterpreted and misunderstood Islam. And when faced with, and another problem was that whereas Christian missionaries and Hindus, they would learn Arabic, they would read the Holy Quran, they would read the Hadith, and then they would attack Muslims. Muslims were forbidden to learn foreign languages. Muslims were forbidden to read the New and the Old Testament. Muslims were forbidden to read the Vedas. So how were they going to confront the other religions? Other religions were always on the attack, and Muslims were always trying to defend themselves and literally denying this instruction of the Holy Prophet that they will not run away from battle. Even today we find many Muslims, they're in Western countries. One person wrote a a letter to, I think, Arizona Tribune. And he said, Islam always teaching obedience to your government. So I said to this person, but the government of the country you come from has declared you kafir. Why don't you accept that if Islam teaches that you should always obey the government? Why didn't Hazrat Imam Hussain obey Yazid? Why did he stand up against Yazid to fight? Yes, Islam teaches us to obey the government as long as the government is just. The Holy Prophet said, if you see tyranny, try and stop it with your hand. If you see tyranny, try and stop it with your tongue. If you see tyranny, if you can't do anything, never reconcile yourself to tyranny. And so Muslim practice, I got this from a website, from a non-Ahmadi website, which says hadith signifies, the hadith quoted above signifies that ba'ath by mashayikh, this is spiritual leaders, from their disciples for tariqah can be linked to this hadith. So there are 4 schools, namely Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, and Hanbali. Likewise, this is in fiqh. And likewise, we have 4 silsilas in tasawwuf: Chishti, Qadri, Naqshbandi, and Sohrawardi. A person can choose any of the tasawwuf silsilas as per his liking, and this will help him to attain nisbat. This is what that website is saying, why you should take the ba'ath. That you promise to do all this. Let me ask you, let's look at our secular affairs. When people apply for British nationality and the government says, okay, you fulfill the conditions, but there is one last thing you have to do before we issue you with a certificate. You must put your hand on the Quran and swear an oath of allegiance to the Queen, that you will obey her and do whatever she says. What about elected officials? Every year, this year, we had Joe Biden going in, putting his hand on the Bible and raising the other hand. I mean, Muslims raise one finger, but generally the tradition in West is to raise the whole hand. And then you take an oath. But the interesting thing I want to read out to you is this, in this instant. This is a book. I don't know if people can see it, if I can. This is in Urdu, and it says Letters of Maulana Maududi, and they've been compiled by a gentleman called Rafi bin Hashmi. Now, as you would know, Maulana Maududi was an opponent of our organization. Okay, his opposition depended on how strong the strongly the public wanted him to oppose it. That this is in the context of people criticizing him for creating a group, Jamaat Islami, and asking people to take a pledge when they join Jamaat Islami. We're talking about 1950s now. Okay, many years after Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. It says that if a group rises to establish the true religion, who have Muhammad Rasulullah, his teachings as the source of their knowledge and God's will to establish. But for this great cause, you cannot do it just in a personal manner. This requires a Jamaat. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, makes a Jamaat and all hell breaks loose. Why are you splitting the Ummah? Why are you doing that? Why is Maulana Maududi splitting the Ummah? Why is he splitting the Pakistani nation? Because he says that if you want it to be more than your personal belief and things, this task requires an organization which calls others to its beliefs and its actions. What are we doing? If they do it, it's fine. It's service of Islam. It's lovely. If Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad does it, oh, suddenly you're splitting the Ummah. You're doing what are you doing? Are you splitting the Ummah? You're creating Jamaat-e-Islami is not splitting the Ummah. But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad creating Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya, that is splitting the Ummah. And then he goes on.
Yes, finish the point.
Okay. That point is finished. I want to go to the point about Bat now. You were going to say something.
Yes, I appreciate your thoughts on the justification for the bayat, and I especially like the fact that you quoted the Quran and the Hadith, as well as putting forward some secular examples. But I'm wondering, why is it necessary to take the bayat? Was it always the requirement when the movement was formed, or what exactly brought it about during the lifetime of the promised Messiah?
Okay, before I answer that, can I just finish this? Okay, because this is about that. Okay, and then he says, then so for this great task, from among the Muslims are needed people, and in the constitution of Jamaat-e-Islami, the reason that we have a condition that only those people about whom we are satisfied are righteous, etc., should be included. But before they join us, पहले वो एक मर्तबा अल्लाह के साथ अपने अहद और मीसाक को इस्तवार कर लें. But before they join us, they should renew their contract with Allah and then start anew their striving and so on. And then he says there is a footnote to his letter. बाज़ लोग शिरकत जमात के लिए तजदीद ईमान की शर्त पर बहुत नाक मुंह चढ़ाते हैं. Some people are very irritated that to join my Jamaat, you have to renew your faith. You have to renew your faith. And they say that, well, such scholars and so on and so forth, why should they do this and so on? And he says the reason is that we ask everyone to do it, because otherwise it will create a disunity in the Jamaat itself. And the other thing is that taking of this pledge creates a revolution in their personal life. It creates a revolution in their personal life. So he says, there was another thing I wanted to read out, but I can't find it now. Now, yes. Initially, to get back to your question, initially there was no bat. And the reason was that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad did everything under God's instructions. Okay, so he started preaching and so on, and writing books and articles and so on. And his articles were appearing in Chicago newspapers in 1880, challenging Christians and so on. And in fact, I have a scan of an article from Chicago Tribune, I think it is, and it says, "Great is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah of Islam." And you see, you and I, we are born into a Muslim home. We know we must pray 5 times a day. We know we must give zakat. We know we must fast and so on. Because we are born in a family where we are told these things are done. But the point about taking the bath is that you are consciously saying that I'm doing these things. Not because I'm born in a Muslim family and I saw my dad, get up at Fajr and pray, so I would just join him, etc., etc. You are now making a conscious promise with God. And another answer is, did the Holy Prophet Muhammad, some people say, do you doubt our Islam and so on? Did the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam doubt the Iman and Islam of Hazrat Abu Bakr radhiyallahu ta'ala, or Hazrat Umar, or Hazrat Ali? That he asked them all to take this bath and say that they will, whatever happens, they will not retreat from the battlefield. You see, times come in the history of people and nations when, through outside attacks, like at the time of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, your faith becomes weakened. And there were prominent Muslims who were embracing Christianity. And they could not answer Christian missionaries. And Hazrat Dr. Bisharat Ahmad Saab writes that he and Dr. Sar Muhammad Iqbal were confronted by a Christian missionary and who raised certain objections against Islam, etc. And Dr. Iqbal, Sir Muhammad Iqbal, just denied what the Christian was saying. And the Christian missionary laughed. He opened the Quran and he said, "Hey, there's a verse of the Holy Quran." And people said, we were so embarrassed. And Dr. Bisharat Ahmad said, I prayed to God, why is Islam being humiliated in this way? That oath to fight was to renew the vigor in your hearts about the truthfulness of Islam, that it will predominate. Look at the West. Look at Muslims in the West. Read any tafsir from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and so on about jihad. Take the sword and kill everyone and cut their heads off if they don't recite the kalima. Do they say that in United States? Do they say this in England? Do they say this in Western Europe? You read a non-Muslim's interpretation of jihad, and it's as if you're reading the writing of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Because people now realize that he was taking Muslims back to the original teaching of Islam. I have just seen an article today about how Islam establishes peace and the fact that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam created the constitution of Medina so that all communities could live together peacefully. Christians and idol worshippers and Jews and Muslims. Everyone was allowed the freedom to practice and preach their religion. These things are coming into West now. It's only a few hundred years ago that members of Church of England were burning Roman Catholics in the UK. Not that long ago. It's only 400 years ago. How many people were burnt at the stake in Spain for following Martin Luther from Germany? This is a few hundred years ago, and yet 1500 years ago, Islam was teaching. We had this Misaq. Do you know that the Holy Prophet wrote a letter to Christians? And in it, he said, if Christians live under Muslim rule, it is the duty of the Muslim government to build churches for them free of cost, to repair churches for them free of cost. Their priests are not to be taxed by way of income tax and so on. Church investments are not to be taxed. Now, none of this was, in the public domain. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, when he asked us to take the bath, he asked us to sacrifice our lives. It may be that if you're attacked with the sword, you have to defend yourself with the sword. If you have a gun, Arif, and you're trying to shoot me, and I stand up and make the most eloquent speech about, how it's not right to kill a human being, I don't think it'll have much effect. I need a gun to defend myself against you with a gun. But when the attacks are intellectual, and the attacks are on your faith, when they're casting doubt, then you have to respond in the same way. And this is what Hazrat Sahib said. One sentence, Deen ko dunya pe muqaddam rakhunga. I shall hold my religion above my worldly affairs. And if we just followed that one few word sentence, Muslims would become model citizens of whatever country they're in. Everything comes into that. And by taking this bath, I've shown that it's in the Quran. I've shown it was the practice of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. I've shown that it has been there for centuries. And just like you have 4 schools of jurisprudence, you have 4 schools of what's called spiritual sciences, of tariqa, and so on. And all of them required people to take bath, to join them and follow them. But the main purpose of bath is to renew our faith in Islam and to bring us together as a single body. If you have an army, like our Jamaat is an army for propagation of Islam, and one major is attacking a city in the north, and the other major is attacking a city in the east, and the third one is attacking a country in the west, and the general sees his army scattered all over the place and he doesn't know what the hell is going on. Is that army going to be successful? The only way the army can be successful if under one command, as instituted by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, they get together and they decide, okay, today we attack the west, today we attack the east, today we attack the south. And I don't mean attack literally, I mean attack figuratively. Then they will be successful. And this is the purpose of our bath, to inspire this faith in our hearts about predominance of Islam, not by force, but by peaceful and loving teaching.
Thank you very much. I certainly understand what is the necessity for the bayat and what
Thank you.
is the how it came about. But
Mhm,
I just wanted to also ask you,
mhm.
was anyone beside Hazrat Mirza Sahib required to institute a pledge before joining a cause?
Yes, yes. I mean, the examples I've given, um, uh, uh, for example, the Holy Prophet did it in his own lifetime, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the four silsilas that I talked about, Naqshbandi and Sohrawardi and so on, people who started those silsilas, they all asked their people who wanted to join, murids, to come and take a bath on their hand. Hazrat Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti even asked, you know what his bath was? People used to go to him and say, I want to take your bath. And he used to say, recite, La ilaha illallah Chishti Rasulullah. This is how he joined people into his group, his silsila. And we are the ones, who are accused of all kinds of things. And this is why I read out Maulana Maududi's extract from his letter. And he said that before you join my party, although it was a political party, I want people to take the bath, the oath to be faithful to this organization and so on, and promise to be, good Muslims, etc. I mean, all Hazrat Sahib was asking people to do was to be good Muslims and propagate Islam. And that somehow has become objectionable. That has been a continuous thing from the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam down to now.
Thank you. My next question has a little bit to do with the mechanics of the pledge. And I get this question a lot from new members. Is it that we pledge to Allah? Do we pledge to Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, or do we pledge to the leader, the Hazrat Amir? Who are we making this covenant with?
Well, basically, the covenant is with Allah, but you need a human being. Okay, and this was what happened when at Badr Rizwan, that Allah is saying that when you promised to not to leave the field of battle on the Prophet's hand, you're doing it on my hand. Okay, now obviously originally it was Hazrat Amir who was taking the bath and so on. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad taking the bath, but after he passed away, then it is now Hazrat Amir who takes the bath. And but I mean, he is a mere symbol of public announcement of what you are promising Allah. That is all. It's like the example I give, that when elected officials go and they take an oath of allegiance, what are they doing? They are taking an oath to uphold the law and the constitution. But that promise, the Chief Justice or someone is there to symbolize the law and so on. So, it's exactly the same thing. in our Jamaat or in religious matters. It's no different from that.
So, following from that, can you is there no provision for you to take the pledge in a private capacity? In the sense that,
Well, the point is this. You see, there are two things. If you do it in your private capacity, then how would people know that you've taken this pledge and become a member of this Jamaat? Only God
so that
will say on the day of judgment that this has happened. Okay.
so it must be on
But,
in a public forum.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because there are two uses. There's obviously the administrative use of this thing. Otherwise, anyone could come and say that I'm a Lahore Ahmadi, in my heart and etc. Fine, I don't doubt their allegiance, but the point is, for administration, I cannot allow them to vote in elections or become members of the executive, etc., etc. So there are two different things. In their heart, yeah, fine, they might be Lahori Ahmadis, but unless there's a public pronouncement, unless there's a public allegiance that we belong to these people, then that makes it possible for you to, I don't know, vote in elections or become members of the executive or whatever it is.
And I suppose that
thing,
also.
Yeah, carry on.
I'm sorry. I suppose it acts as a sort of a protection in that you don't have persons coming from outside just saying by lip service that they are Lahore Ahmadis and they are coming into the organization, making voting, making decisions that may be inimical to the organization.
That's right.
If they want to be nefarious, I suppose it acts as a sort of a protection more than anything else.
Exactly. I mean, Trinidad Jamaat suffered from this many years ago, and you remember there was a question of Jinnah Memorial Mosque and so on, and it wasn't clear who was an Ahmadi and who wasn't an Ahmadi, and that led to great difficulties. As you and the other thing is that you have to try. We are human beings, and we are all frail and weak, and etc. etc. Taking the bet is showing courage, a public pronouncement. That I stand with these people. It's like before football matches, many white players take the knee now to show that they stand with those who've been disadvantaged over the centuries, etc. And let me tell you one thing about the Ba'ath, and that is that it means you have to do things sincerely. Okay? Now,
I'm glad you raised that, because my next question, or my final question to you would be, how do we live up to the pledge? And I think that would be the basis for the sincerity. So I'm glad you can speak more to that.
Yeah. It's not enough just to stand there and read out the words. Okay? Let me give you an example. We've all heard about Abraham Lincoln and how he freed the slaves and all this kind of thing. And what happened immediately after the Confederates lost? Each state made laws, and they went like this. It's a criminal offense to be unemployed. So all the slave owners made their slaves unemployed because they couldn't have slaves anymore. It was against federal law. And because they were unemployed, they were all arrested and put in jail and then rented off again to the same slave owners. So what's the point of saying slaves are free?
Yeah.
You know, in Urdu they say, you didn't want to hold your nose like this, so you went like that and held your nose like that. So they just, if you're not sincere, you just find ways and means that, did you know that hila or excuse or justification is actually a recognized thing in non-Ahmadi Islamic, I don't know what you want to call it, law. And I'll give you an example. Someone actually wrote a letter to recognized scholars at the time of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And he asked, it's called the question of Inshallah. Inshallah ka masla. So he says, I'm going to court and I have to put my hand on the Holy Quran and swear to tell the truth. What should I do? And the Maulana replies that you look at the judge's face. If you think he realizes what the question of Inshallah is, that you put your hand on the Holy Quran and you say, I will tell the truth, and then you whisper, Inshallah. But if you look at his face and he doesn't know the question of Inshallah, then you put your hand on the Quran and you say, I will tell the truth, Inshallah. And then you can lie, because if God had willed it, you would have told the truth. So it's God's will that you lied. So what is the point of having a verse in the Holy Quran which says, bear true witness even if it's against your relatives?
Yeah.
So when you don't have sincerity, whether it's politics or it's religion or whatever it is, then you find some kind of a lame reason to justify whatever it is you're doing. Like, this question of Inshallah. It was a big thing at the time of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. I'll have you know that whether you could, having said Inshallah, you could blatantly lie, even though you've taken an oath on the Holy Quran. So sincerity is the most important thing. And that's the point about the pledge. You prayed. Why did you pray? Do you understand what prayer is? Do you see, you stand like that and you're accounting to God for your deeds. And then you go like that, and then you recognize God's majesty. And then you fall down in prostration and say, God, I accounted for my deeds, and I recognize the fact that you are of your glory and majesty, and you're the only one who can forgive. And now I'm begging in prostration to be forgiven for my human frailties and weaknesses. Let me tell you what I mean by these things. There was a Maulana who led the Isha prayer, and at the end of the prayer, a man went to the Maulana and said, you missed out one rakat. You only said 3 rakat. And Maulana said, oh, well, no one said anything. Why are you so certain that I missed out 1 rakat? And this man said, well, I have 4 shops. And in each rakat, I do my day's takings for shop A, then second shop B, then shop C. And today I only got as far as shop C, and you said Assalamu so if this is your attitude to prayer, is there any point in you going to pray? The prayer is supposed to create a link between your heart and God. But if you're doing accounting for your business at that time, what benefit are you going to get? And And I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but I've experienced this. I'm not thinking of anything. I say Allahu Akbar, and suddenly everything I've forgotten to do starts coming into my, oh, I was meant to ring so and oh, I was going to text so and so and so on. So, and and that's the point. Hazrat Dr. Sayyid Ahmad Khan Sahab, who was our Amir some time ago, in his private prayers, if any thought other than Allah entered his head, he'd end his prayer and start again. Obviously, he couldn't do that in his public prayers, but in his private prayers, if any thought other than Allah entered his head during the prayers, he would, start all over again. And that is, when you're away and you ring home and your wife picks up the phone, what do you say? Oh, I've been thinking about you all day long. And I thought, I have to ring you and talk to you and so on. It's the same with prayer. Do you love God less than that? There's the story of Hazrat Ayub, Job, who was put through many trials because God said, look, what a humble person he is, sincere and so on. And Satan said he has power, and God said, okay, his power will be taken away, and his money was taken away, and his health was taken away, and he became very sick. And one day his wife said, why don't you pray to Allah to take these calamities away from you? And Hazrat Ayub said to his wife, woman, why don't you leave me? And his wife said, how can I leave you? I love you, and I'll serve you come what may. And Hazrat Ayub said, woman, do you think my love for Allah is less than your love for me? That I should complain to him that why have I lost everything and so on. So that is the sincerity that the pledge tries to create in your heart, that whatever comes, you keep on struggling and trying and so on, but whatever you say, whatever you do, you never complain to God. You say, okay, that's fine. If that is your will, I'm happy. I'll keep on struggling. I'll keep on trying. But I won't complain at what your will has made to come to pass. And that can only happen if you act on the pledge sincerely every minute of your life.
Thank you very much. Any closing remarks in relation to giving advice for those who may be thinking of taking the pledge?
Well, as you know, I live in England, okay? And I have seen that Muslims have no choice but to follow the interpretation of Islam given by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and Maulana Muhammad Ali if they are to survive in those countries which are multi-religious, etc., multicultural. That is the only way. You see, in some countries where you are in a where Muslims are in a majority and so on, if someone objects, you can just slap them, then bring a case of blasphemy against them and put them in jail and so on. But in today's world, with internet and WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and so on, that just shows to the rest of the world that you cannot answer objections against Islam or the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, etc. Now, that is you personally. The next thing is, how are you going to do it collectively as a group? And collectively, you join the people who you know are struggling to put together that picture of Islam to the world that was brought by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is why they should take the pledge. That is why they should join this Jamaat, because this Jamaat is the only one that can answer any criticism at all about Islam, about the Holy Prophet Muhammad, etc. No other Jamaat can do it. They cannot, because they have fundamentally misunderstood much of the teaching of the Holy Quran. So do not hesitate.
Thank you, Imam, for enlightening us on the terms and the history and the purpose of our bayat, our pledge.
Pleasure.
Thank you as well, our viewers, for your attention, questions on the subject. You can find the terms of the pledge in the link in the description to this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and we look forward to you joining us again for more topics on Islam.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.
Assalamu alaikum.